Back in 1967, Al Davis was the managing general partner of the Oakland Raiders, who predicted great things for his #1 draft choice that year, Gene Upshaw. Al Davis still is the head man at the Raiders, and he's here today to present Gene Upshaw for enshrinement. Mr. Al Davis.
Just when? For 3 memorable decades, the Oakland and now Los Angeles Raiders have had the greatest players, the greatest coaches, the greatest plays, and performed in the greatest games ever played in the annals of professional football as well as sports. During these 3 decades, the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s, the Raiders have the best record in professional football as well as professional sports. Among the greatest players during these decades, the quarterbacks were names like Flores, LaMonica, George Blanda, the greatest clutch player who ever played the game, Stabler, the indefatigable Plunkett. The coaches were the legendary John Madden and the excellent Tom Flores. The Hall of Famers were the indestructible Jim Otto, and the standard for excellence of all cornerbacks, Willie Brown. The Raiders are the only team in professional football who played in the Super Bowl in the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s. And there was one offensive guard, one constant, who started in all 3 decades and is the only player in NFL history who started in the Super Bowl in the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s. His name is Gene Upshaw. Gene Upshaw came to the Oakland Raiders in 1967 out of Little Texas A&I as a first-round draft choice in the first AFL-NFL draft. He captained the West team in the College All-Star game. Gene, when drafted, was approximately 6'5", 260 pounds, and had never played guard in his life and did not want to play for the Raiders. He thought they were renegades. Today the word is Mavericks. But not only did he start for the Raiders for 15 years because we loved to listen to what the players want, and not only did he start in 200 consecutive league games and played the most league games ever by any Raider player, he played offensive guard, and he was the Raider captain for 9 consecutive seasons. He played in 24 postseason contests, 10 AFC NFL title games, and as I mentioned, 3 Super Bowls. He played in 6 straight Pro Bowls. Gene Upshaw was truly a force in the life and the greatness of the Raiders. I've said this before, that I love to come here to this hall, to walk through its exhibits, to pay tribute to the great men who we idolized and in whose glory we all share. It has always brought back a realization of the debt we owe to each other, and I and the Raiders, for one, shall never forget that debt. This great class and its magnificent presenters bring back memories to me, memory of great games, as if it were only yesterday. They were glorious battles on the gridiron because in the 60s and the 70s, we were continuously challenged. I'll never forget the green and white of the New York Jets in the late 60s, Joe Willie Namath, Don Maynard, and as Joe told, how he hit Maynard for 99 yards in 2 plays and told me about it before we got up here. And I said to him, "Who won the game, Joe?" But I also remember that one play in Shea Stadium in 1968 when Namath in the swirling winds of Shea Stadium hit Maynard with a 59-yard pass that broke the back of the Raiders and propelled the Jets into Super Bowl III. I'll never forget the Big Red of Kansas City, Hank Stram, the impeccable Hank Stram with Len Dawson at the helm. And one play stands out in my mind in 1979 in Oakland. Dawson at the mouth of the goal hit Otis Taylor for about 50 yards that propelled the Kansas City Chiefs on their way to glory. And of course, in the early 70s, it was Don Shula's Miami Dolphins with Zonka and Langer. And who can ever forget the sea of hands catch in the Oakland Coliseum, stabler to Clarence Davis with approximately 26 seconds left on the clock. And then in the mid-70s, the steel curtain. The black and gold of Chuck Noll's Pittsburgh Steelers with its captain, Joe Green. The immaculate reception. And the vicious struggles in the 70s with the Steelers. These were the greatest games. These were the greatest plays, the greatest coaches, and the greatest players. On this stand today, there's 21 Super Bowls. There were 11 victorious Super Bowls among that group. And the reason I bring it up, because there's one person on that stand who was there for all of it. He was there as a player. Gene Upshaw, you were there. And I take you back to the Oakland Coliseum, and I can hear the roar of the crowd, and the chills go through my body, and I can see those famed silver and black uniforms. Gene Upshaw, I can see you walking to the center of the field to greet the opponent's captain with that famed Highway 63 on your jersey, the white collar, the white tape forearms, that Raider battle-scarred helmet in your hand. You know, the Raiders have always believed that what wins is great players and great organization. Gene Upshaw was the consummate organization player. He wore that Raider uniform with pride. He wore it with poise. He wore it with class. He was a star among stars. But he was a man for all seasons. He was for the thunder and lightning of the awesome battles, but the serenity and wisdom of the council room. A player who, by his deeds and words, over 15 memorable years, dramatized the appreciation of offensive linemen by the media and pro football fans throughout the world. He, with his enormous size, his enormous speed, and his enormous heart, was the prototype guard. He became the standard of excellence by which offensive guards were and will be judged in eternity. In fact, Gene Upshaw is the first player in the history of the National Football League who exclusively played guard ever inducted into the National Football League Hall of Fame. It's a great honor and a privilege, and I offer my respect and remembrance to the Upshaw family. They've been a great part of my life, and certainly it's been an emotional and inspirational experience to be here today. In short, it was ordained from the beginning that Gene Upshaw was born to achieve excellence, honor, to lead, and to achieve eternal enshrinement in our own Valhalla, our own Mount Olympus of legendary heroes, the National Football League Hall of Fame. With great pleasure, I introduce to you Gene Upshaw. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just before I took the few steps it took to get here, John Henry and Joe Green wanted to know how long they were and told me not to be too long. I mean, these guys were up here all day. But this is a tremendous honor for all of us to be enshrined in Pro Football's Hall of Fame. I must say that, like everyone else, you don't get here alone. You don't get here by yourself. You had to have great coaches along the way, parents, family, and we had to have the fans. And all of that was important to us. My parents are here, Cora and Eugene Upshaw. I had a brother, played with the Kansas City Chiefs under Hank Schramm, with Lenny Dawson, Willie Lanier, Bobby Bell, Marvin Upshaw, who grew up in high school a lot larger than I was. He still is today, but it's in the wrong places. And he was the guy that sort of pushed me. He was always a little better than I was in football. I never liked football. I didn't like the contact, the hitting, all the violence. I really thought that I would be entering into Pro Baseball's Hall of Fame. But I went to a little small school in Texas A&I. That school was amazing, tremendous school. But before I got to Texas A&I, I met up with a couple of coaches, Buddy Hamrick, which was my line coach in high school, Melvin Moody, they're both here. They thought I couldn't play football, and they were right. So I didn't get a scholarship once I left A&I. I left Robstown High School. I walked out on the football field at A&I, and Gil Stanky was my college coach, asked me what was I doing on the field. I said, I'm just sort of looking around. He said, get a uniform, come back out, and I did. And I earned a scholarship in 3 days. Went on from A&I to become a #1 draft choice with the Raiders. Now I'll tell you, I had great role models as a young child growing up in Texas. My parents, my high school coaches, my college coach, my brothers, Marvin and Doug Upshaw, were all tremendous people that helped me get this far. But once I got into pro football, taking that first leap into the real world as an adult, away from home, I met the people with the Raiders, the whole family. And we do have a family. We have been classed as renegades, misfits, and mavericks. But we all stick together out there, and we always will. And I met the Raider family. They had some unique individuals. I'll join the class here now of teammates of mine that are already in the Hall of Fame. Willie Brown, Jim Otto, George Blanda. And this is just the beginning for other guys that will come along after Gene Upshaw. We have had a tradition with the Raiders that winning was the most important thing. Winning is all that matters, victory. As Al and I were riding in the parade, he was still saying the old chant, just win, baby. And that's been a part of my life, and it will be in the future. Now, I told those guys I wouldn't take a lot of time, and I won't. Because we have a lot to do, and we've covered a lot. I can never thank all of the people that have helped me get here. I can't thank all of the people that's had so much influence on my life. My teammates, there are too many. My friends, the media, the people in the Bay Area, people in Los Angeles, they've been very good to me. It's given me an opportunity to do some things that I never thought was possible, but I had the right upbringing, I had the right discipline. I had what it took because I was afraid to fail. Someone asked me, what was it like to play for Al Davis? What was it like? Can you describe what it was like in 30 seconds? Well, it takes longer than 30 seconds to describe Al Davis. One day he'll take his place in history, like Otto, Blanda, and the other men here. I also have my wife here, Terry, my son, Eugene III, and my 3-month-old son. Even at my age, you can still do it, Justin. And they're a big part of my family, and they help me as we go forward from this day forward. Because you all know, I'm involved in a pretty controversial position as a representative, executive director of the Players in the National Football League. The advancement, the strive that we make as a union will be rooted in my upbringing in Texas, my college career, and the years I spent with the Raiders. We will do the right thing. We will do what's best for the players. We will remember that it takes 3 for the game of football. It takes the players, it takes the owners, and it takes the fans. We have a unique relationship. I love the game of football. I love what it's given me and all of the men that are in the hall. It's the greatest honor that you could ever receive as an individual. And I must say, I would cherish it, but I don't walk in that hall alone. I walk in there with everyone that I've met, everyone that's had a part of my life, everyone that has pushed me when I didn't feel like going. I go into the hall with all of you because you are what make the game of football great. As I take my place in history, hopefully it will be a place that I can always look back and remember this moment, because so many of you have had such a tremendous part of making this a successful career for Gene Upshaw. Thank you very much.